Hello everyone and welcome to the 5-minute German A1 exam preparation series. In this video, we will take a look at the exam pattern for the Goethe A1 exam. I will tell you what are the different parts in the A1 exam, what are the different kind of questions that you will come across and how you can answer them. So let's not waste any time and let's get started. The Goethe A1 exam consists of 4 parts. The first one is Hören, which is listening. The second is lesen, which is reading. Then we have schreiben, which is writing. And the fourth is sprechen, which is speaking. So in the exam, these are the 4 parts of language in which you will be tested. Now, how much time do you have for each of these sections? So usually what happens in the exam is that when you go to the exam hall or the exam center, then they start with the hören or the listening part. And this usually takes around 20 minutes. Once you are finished with the hören part, then they will give you a booklet which contains the lesen, which is reading, and the schreiben, which is the writing part. For the lesen or reading part, you have around 25 minutes, and for the schreiben part, you have 20 minutes. But since you get the booklet for both of these parts together, that's why you have 45 minutes in total, and it is up to you whether you take more time in lesen or more time in schreiben. So my suggestion is that you start with the lesen part and complete it, and then with the time that you have left, you do the schreiben part. And then at the end, you have the sprechen part, which takes around 15 minutes, and this happens in groups. So you might have to wait after your exam until your turn comes and you give the speaking part. Now, how much marks do each of these sections have? So each of these sections has 15 marks. So you have 15 marks for hören, 15 for lesen, 15 for schreiben, and 15 for sprechen. So all 4 parts have equal weightage. And we have 60 marks in total. And to pass, you need 36 marks or 60% marks to pass. So you can get more marks in one section and maybe less marks in the other section. But if the total is 36 or more, then you will pass the exam. Now let's take a look at what is included in each one of these sections. So the first section is the hören or listening section, and in this you have 3 parts. In the first part, you have 6 questions, and you have to answer them after listening to different recordings or conversations. And these conversations or recordings are played twice. So they will play it once and then it will be repeated once again. And in these questions, you will have 3 options, A, B, and C, and you have to select the correct option. Now let's take a look at how it will be in the exam. So I have an A1 sample exam over here. So let's go to the hören part. So this is the hören part, and over here there's some text which explains the same thing which I told you, that this has 3 parts and you will hear some small conversations or statements, and then you have to give the answers. So let's take a look at the first part. So over here they have an example. So you will hear a conversation, and then there's the question over here related to the conversation. So it is asked that which room number does Herr Schneider have, and in the conversation they will tell you the room number, and then you have to cross the correct answer. Let's take a look at some other questions that are included in the sample exam. So here is a question about how much does the sweater or pullover cost, and there are different options over here. So you have to listen to the statements and select the correct answer. So you see there are 3 questions on this page, and then we have 3 more questions over here. So 6 questions in total, and each question has 1 mark. So this was part 1 of the hören section. Then in the second part, you will have 4 questions, but this time the recording or conversation will only be played once. So it will not be repeated. However, in this case, you just have to mark whether the statement was true or false. So let's take a look at how these questions look like in the exam. So here I am in the second part or Teil 2, and you see it is also written on the exam that you have to select richtig oder falsch. So richtig is true and falsch is false. And that you will hear each text only once. So einmal means once. So over here the first one is an example. So die Reisende soll zur Information in Halle C kommen. So the travelers should come for information in the hall C. So depending on the recording that you hear, this statement was true, so that's why it is marked richtig over here. And similarly, you have questions 7 to 10 over here. So 4 questions where you will hear a recording and then you have to mark true or false. So this was part 2 of the hearing section. Then we have the last part, which is part 3. And over here you have 5 questions, and these recordings or conversations will also be played twice. And similar to part 1, you will have 3 options, which are A, B, and C, and you have to select the correct one. Now let's also take a look at these questions. So here is part 3, and you see over here that there are no pictures as we saw in part 1. You just have a statement, and then you have to hear the conversation and select the correct answer. So these are 5 questions in total. So you see 11, 12, and 13 on this page, and then 14 and 15 on the second page. One more important point over here, as you see at the end, is that you don't have to mark the answers on this page. Rather, you will get an Antwortbogen or an answer sheet on which you have to mark the answers. Let's take a look at that as well. So if you also have this sample exam, then you will find this Antwortbogen at the end. So here is the Antwortbogen, and this is what you will get in the exam as well. So at the top you have to give your last name and first name. So Nachname is last name or surname, and Vorname is your first name. Then you have to give your institution or Ort at the location where you are giving the exam. Also your Geburtsdatum or date of birth. So this is days, then month, and then years over here. And the rest, the exam center or invigilator will tell you what you have to fill in the PTN number and PS. And now you see over here at the Hören part that you have the questions 1 to 6 under Teil 1 or part 1, then 7 to 10 under Teil 2, which is part 2, and then 11 to 15 under Teil 3 or part 3. So you have to cross the correct one. So this was the Hören or listening section of the exam. Now let's take a look at the Lesen or reading section, which is the second part of the exam. So this also has 3 parts. In the first part, you will read an email or a letter, and you will have 5 questions related to the text that you read. And you will have to answer them as true or false. So let's see how this looks like in the exam. So here I am in the Lesen and Schreiben section. As I told you that you get the booklet for both of them together. So you have 45 minutes for them, and they have divided it into 25 minutes for the reading part and 20 minutes for the writing part. So let's take a look at the reading part first of all. So this is Teil 1 of the reading part. And as I said that you have to mark it richtig oder falsch. So over here they have an example which has been marked as false. So this statement is not true. Then you have this email over here where there's some information about the arrival of somebody. And then you have some questions related to the email. So you have to read this information at the top, and then you have to mark these questions as true or false. Then as we go to the second page, then over here we have this text, and questions 3, 4, and 5 are related to the text that you see over here. So you have to read this text and then answer these questions as true or false. So this was part 1. In part 2, you have to read some different advertisements, and this part also contains 5 questions, and you have to select the correct option. So you will only have 2 options, A or B, and you have to select the correct one. So let's take a look at this part as well. So here we are in part 2 of the reading section, and you see over here an example. The question is, you want to know, regnet es in Deutschland? Does it rain in Germany? So which one of these 2 options is the correct one? So on the left side, you see it tells something about an open air concert, and on the right side, it tells about the German weather service. So which of these 2 options is the correct one? There's some other text that you should also read, and then select the correct option. So in this case, option B is the correct one, which is the German weather service, because from here you will get information about whether it will rain or not. So in this way, you have some other questions over here as well. And in each of these questions, you just have to read both the advertisements and select the correct option. Then in the last part, you will read some information and answer some questions. This part also has 5 questions, and you have to answer them as true or false. So similar to part 1. So here we are in part 3, and you see the example over here. The statement is, zum Deutsch lernen gehen Sie in die Beethovenstraße 23. To learn German, you will go to Beethovenstraße 23. So then you have to read this information over here, and it says Sprachzentrum so language center, and it is at Beethovenstrasse 23. So this means that this statement is correct, but you will not mark it over here, rather in the Antwortbogen, which I showed you earlier. So you have some other questions, similar questions over here, and in each of the questions you have to mark it right or wrong. So this was the reading section. Then we go to the third part, which is the writing section or Schreiben. And this has only two parts. So in the first part, you have to fill out a form. So there will be some information or text given to you. So you will read the text and then you have to fill 5 blanks in a form. And each blank is of 1 mark. So 5 marks in total. So let's see an example of this. So here is the first part of the writing section. And over here you have some information that you have to read. And then you have to fill out these 5 missing informations on the form. So you have Anzahl der Personen, number of persons, that is one you have to fill out. Then davon Kinder, how many children are there, this you have to fill out. And number 3 is the Urlaubsort or the location. Then you have over here one question which is about the payment method, and then the Reisetermin or the date of travel. So you have to read the information at the top and then fill in these blanks. Then in part 2, you have to write a letter or an email, and this has to be around 30 words or 4 to 5 sentences. And this has 10 marks. Now let's take an example of this. So this is the second part and it is written over here. Sie möchten im August Dresden besuchen. You want to visit Dresden im August. So Dresden is a city in Germany, and you have to write a letter or an email to the tourist information, and it must contain these 3 informations. So first is, why are you writing them? So you have to give them the reason why you are writing. Then you have to ask them about information about films or museums, etc. And you also have to ask them about the hotel address. And over here it is written, please write to each point 1 to 2 sentences on the Antwortbogen. So this is around 30 words. And you also have to write eine Anrede und einen Gruß. So you also have to write a starting such as dear sir or madam, and also a ending such as best regards, as we write it in English. So this was the Schreiben part or the writing part. Then the last part is the Sprechen or speaking part. And this also has 3 subparts. So in the first part, you have to introduce yourself, and there are some different things that you have to say in this introduction. So if we take a look at the Sprechen part from the exam, then you see over here that in part 1 it is written sich vorstellen, introduce yourself, and in the introduction you have to give this information such as Name, your name, Alter, how old are you, Land, where are you from, Wohnort, where do you live, Sprachen, which are the languages that you speak, Beruf, what is your profession, and Hobby, what are your hobbies or hobby. So this is the information that you have to give in your introduction. So I have already made a full video on how you can introduce yourself in German, which covers all these different points. I will link it in the description below. You can go and check it out and prepare yourself for the exam. Then the second part of the speaking exam is to ask questions and give answers. So you will use W-Fragen or Ja-Nein-Fragen to make questions. And if somebody else asks you a question, then you also have to give an answer. Now on what topics will you ask these questions? So for that you will get some different cards which have some topic on it, such as the ones that you see over here. So you have a topic which is Essen und Trinken, so eating and drinking, and you have a word over here which is Frühstück or breakfast. So you have to ask a question related to this topic. So for example, you can say, wann frühstückst du? Or wann frühstücken Sie? And if somebody asks you this question, then you can say, ich frühstücke 8 Uhr. So there will be some other questions over here as well. So depending on what the word is, you have to make a question. And it is good that you use this word in the question or answer as well. And the last part of the speaking exam will be to make requests and react to them. And for this, you will use the imperative, which we also learned in one of the lessons. If you don't know what the imperative is, I will also link the video in the description below. You can go and check it out. Now let's see some example questions of how you have to make these requests or what are the topics. So here we are at Teil 3 or part 3. So in this case, you will not have words, rather you will have some different images. So over here you have a book, Then you have a pencil over here. Over here you have a clock. So depending on what kind of image or object you are given, you have to make a request and the other person will have to answer it. So I will give you some tips of how you can make these requests, which will make it easier for you in the exam. So you don't have to worry. We will take a look at this in the lesson where we will go into detail about preparing for this part. So this was an overview of the different sections that you have in the A1 exam in which you will be tested. So as I mentioned earlier, we will go into detail on each of these parts and I will give you some tips and tricks on how you can prepare for them so that you get good marks in the exam and you pass it without any problem. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for your time and continuous support, and we will see each other in the next video.